So today what we're going to look at is Motivation and Work by David Myers, Psychology Textbook, 8th edition, Chapter 12. So remember again, this is just an intro telling you what we're going to look at. So when we look at motivation, motivation is a need or desire that kind of energizes us and directs us towards a goal that we want to accomplish. So when we look at Alan Ralston, what he did was he was motivated to cut his arm off in order to free himself from a rock. And because he was motivated, he could continue to do that and live. So the motivation to live energized him enough to keep taking a jagged rock and sawing off his arm. Now, when we look at the different theories, when we look at motivation, there's this thing called instinct theory, drive reduction theory, arousal theory, and hierarchy of motives theory. So when we look at instincts, instincts are something that are inborn, and they are not necessarily learned. Like an instinct for a bird is to build a nest. Now for a human, our instinct is to find shelter, like when it's stormy and it's bad weather. But these are things that are inborn. So a woman, she's building a house, she builds it different than the way a bird would build it. Drive reduction theory, this is like if you need to eat or drink, that's the need, and then the drive is hunger, thirst. And so what you do in order to reduce this is you go ahead and eat or drink something. So the need, the drive is going to reduce. So you drive reducing or drive reduction behavior. So when we're hungry, what it is that our body is going to have some stomach pains. And so why we eat is to go ahead and get our body back to homeostasis. And this is just our internal steady rate that our body should be at. So you can see an empty stomach, deprived of food. Now when we fill it, our stomach's full, and so we no longer have the need to actually eat. The drive is reduced. So an incentive, where our needs push the incentive, positive or negative stimuli, they pull us in reducing our drives. So a food-deprived person who smells baking bread or anything baking, like baking cookies, they have a stronger hunger drive at this point, because now the incentive, okay, and then you've got that pull. Okay, the incentive to eat is to reduce this drive, and the pull is getting that smell, that delicious smell of cookies or bread baking. So optimal arousal, human motivation aims to seek optimal levels of arousal, not to eliminate them. So people like to do stuff that makes them happy. So young monkeys and children are known to explore the environment in the absence of a need-based drive. So as long as kids are happy and they're adjusted to the environment, they'll actually explore, because there's no need for them to feel like they are hungry or they're thirsty or some other need-based drive is there. Maslow come up with this hierarchy of needs, so you should know Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a part of the motivation unit, but it's also a part of our personality unit. So go over it. We're going to go over it. Maslow is a humanist, and a humanist is someone who kind of looks at the best of all people. They try and look at the whole person. So when he looks at people and he looks at motivation, he looks at things like your physiological needs. And so here's the hierarchy of needs. The physiological needs are things like hunger and thirst. And so this is the basis. If we don't have physiological needs, like we can't meet hunger and thirst, we don't move up this pyramid. The pyramid moves up with time, okay? So first you need to have your needs for hunger and thirst met in order for you to now move up to this next stage called safety needs. In safety needs, we need to feel that our world is safe, orderly, and predictable. And because our world is orderly, safe, and predictable, we feel safe and secure in that environment. And once we feel safe, secure in that environment, we can move up to this belongingness and love needs. So in belongingness and love, we need to love and be loved in return. And we need to be accepted for who we are, and we need to accept others. Now, if we don't feel this, then we feel alienated and lonely. Now, if you meet this, then you get to move up here to the esteem needs. So in esteem needs, the need for self-esteem, achievement, confidence, and independence. In esteem, you need to actually have recognition for what you do, and you need to actually have respect from other people. Now, once your esteem needs are met, then you can move up higher on this pyramid to the very last level called self-actualization. And self-actualization means that you have to live up to your unique and fullest potential. So this is you being the best you can possibly be. And so when you look at this, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you look at someone like these hurricane survivors, or if you look at the television show Lost, you know, they weren't able to do any of this stuff until they were able to secure water and they were able to secure food. And once the survivors of Lost actually got that, then they needed to do like some sort of safety shelter. And when they were able to do that, then they were able to start building those bonds that they had on the show. And then they were able to start recognizing and respecting other people for the roles that they were doing within the safety and within the loving area of the actual show. And then they were able to reach their fullest potential and know what they were supposed to do with their lives now on this new island, okay? Hunger. When do we eat? Obviously, when we're hungry, right? When are we hungry? When there's no food in our stomachs, okay? Now, how do we know when our stomach is empty? It's because our stomach growls and we have these things called hunger pains. So when we look at hunger pains, what you need to know is Washburn. Washburn is going to swallow a balloon, and while he swallows a balloon, don't do this, for the love of God, don't do this. When you swallow a balloon, when he swallowed the balloon, it was connected, okay, guys? And he swallowed the balloon in his stomach, and what he wanted to see was what made our brain actually aware of our hunger. And so what he noticed was every time his stomach actually contracted, they would measure it, and he would know that he is hungry. That's when the signal would go to his brain, hey, I'm hungry. The stomach, if you remove it, so what they did was they removed rat stomachs and they connected the esophagus to the small intestines. The rats, however, still felt hungry and they still ate food, even though you kind of like circumvented the stomach. It's the same thing with the gastric bypass patients. They're making the stomach smaller so that they eat less, but it's not fixing the psychological part of eating, because eating is physical, but it's also psychological. You need to eat, but do we need to eat, you know, a king-size Twix bar? Probably not. You could probably eat half of it, if even that. But this is what we need to look at when we're looking at this hunger drive, is the drive's there. Glucose, the glucose level in our blood is maintained, and we need to keep it maintained. Insulin is going to decrease the glucose in the blood, and it makes us feel hungry. And so for particularly diabetics, they need to be particularly careful with their glucose level, with their sugar level. So glucose in the brain. So levels of glucose in the brain are monitored by receptors or neurons in the stomach, liver, and intestines, and they send signals to the hypothalamus in the brain. And remember, one way that you could look at glucose levels, radioactive glucose levels in the brain, is with a PET scan. So the hypothalamic center, and this is just the LH, it brings our hunger on, okay? So if you destroy it, and the animal has no interest in eating, this is what's going to result. The reduction of blood glucose stimulates orexin in the lateral hypothalamus, which leads rats to eat ravenously. So your brain has a lot to do with whether you eat or whether you don't eat. So the hypothalamic center, so if you have the ventromedial hypothalamus, this is going to depress hunger, and when it depresses it, okay, if you depress it, if you destroy it, there's going to be a difference. If you destroy it, the animal will eat excessively. And so here's our little fat mouse where they destroy his VMH system. So the hypothalamus and hormones. So here's just how your hormones actually affect your hunger. So set point theory, this is just a theory that your body has a weight that it wants to stay at. And so if you start losing weight and you're losing below the set point theory, what's going to end up happening is that your body is going to make you take more food in to get back to that set point theory, your body's natural weight that it wants to be at. Now, if you gained weight, then what's going to end up happening is your body is going to try and make you less hungry to get down to your normal size at your set point theory. So this psychology of hunger, memory plays an important role in hunger. If, like when you look at people who have amnesia patients eat frequently if you give them food. So if you give them food, they're just going to eat. When we look at taste preferences and we look at the nature-nurture kind of thing, we're going to look at biology or culture. Body chemistry and environmental factors influence not only when we feel hungry, but actually what we are hungry for. So when you look at different cultures, like if you're from a area that has a lot of heat, you know, a hot climate, you're actually going to prefer spicier foods. So hot cultures like spicy food. So countries with hot climates, they use more bacteria inhibiting spices in their meat dishes, so they actually like hotter food and they're from hot places. Now we do look at eating disorders when we look at this actual motivation chapter 2. So anorexia nervosa, this is a eating disorder in which a person has actually normal weight, and their weight is normal, and then what they start to do is they decide not to eat at all, and they continuously lose weight. However, psychologically they feel that they are still overweight. Now, bulimia is different, but it's still an eating disorder, and it'd be in our DSM-4 because it's an abnormal disorder. This is a disorder characterized by episodes of them overeating, binging, and purging. And so binging and purging, what they do is they eat a lot of high-calorie food. They eat a whole gallon of ice cream, everything on the Taco Bell menu, and they would keep eating, and then they would vomit, or they would use laxatives to get it out, and then they could do excessive exercising as well. Anorexic people also exercise excessively too. Anorexia, they get down to the very bone-like structure of your human body, and eventually their heart gives out, and that's how they die. Bulimics don't really lose weight. They're typically slightly overweight, and they think that bulimia is going to help them actually drop weight. When we look at obesity in America, or obesity in general, it's a disorder that's characterized by being excessively overweight, and it's going to increase your risk for certain health issues like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, arthritis, back problems. All of these things continue to get worse the more weight you pick up. So when we look at reasons for eating disorders, sexual abuse does not cause eating disorders. It's not to say that the people who suffer from eating disorders haven't suffered sexual abuse. It's just it doesn't cause eating disorders. Families, when families put a lot of emphasis on eating, when there's an excessive concern on it, we notice that those children develop eating disorders. So if your mom's counting your calories, or your mom's constantly on a diet, or your dad, it kind of puts the pressure of weight, and kids build pretty bad self-esteem about their body because of it. But that doesn't mean that just because your parents are healthy, that are health conscious, that it's going to cause it. Genetics, twin studies show that eating disorders are more likely to occur in identical twins, same DNA, rather than our fraternal twins, like our brothers and sisters. When we look at body images in women, women have a really weird set of images of what they think. So Western cultures tend to place more emphasis on a thin body image in comparison to other cultures. So here's just a scale, and if you look, here's the thinnest. This is what women believe that they should look like. Here's what women think men prefer. Here's what men actually prefer. Here's women's current body image. So we're just way off if you're a female in America. So summary, look at the biological, psychological, and social cultural stuff when we look at eating. Sexual motivation is another thing that we look at with motivation. Sexual motivation is your species' way of continuing to procreate and survive. And so when we look at the physiology of sex, we look at Masters and Johnson, and they describe the human sexual response to 4 phases. So we look at the sexual response phase. So the excitement, and this is the part where the genitalia becomes engorged. And then we look at a plateau. This is when the excitement is going to peak, like breathing, pulse, and blood pressure is going to go up. The orgasm is when the body contracts all over, and there's normally an increase in breathing, blood pressure, and pulse, and then there's a sexual release, and then there's a resolution. And in the resolution, what happens is it's over. Males are going to go through a refractory period where they're not going to be able to respond, and women resolve a little bit slower. Sexual problems. For men, there is premature ejaculation and erectile disorder. Women also suffer from things like orgasmic disorders where they cannot have an orgasm. And so these problems are not due to personality disorders, and they can normally be treated through like behavior therapy or drugs like Viagra for our patients who suffer from ED. When you look at hormones and sexual behavior, sex hormones affect the development of sexual characteristics, and they activate your sexual behavior. So for males, they have testes, and their testosterone is their actual hormone. Men do have a small amount of estrogen in their body. Females have ovaries and adrenals, and in females they have estrogen, and they do also have